Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. A famous riddle, which many of you may have heard, and if you know the answer to this riddle, then don't shout it out because then you ruin the fun for everyone else. A poor person has this. A rich person needs this. And this is greater than God. A poor person has this. A rich person needs this. And this is greater than God. I'll say it one more time. A poor person has this. A rich person needs this. And this is greater than God. The answer is nothing. A poor person generally has nothing. A rich person generally needs nothing. And what is greater than God? Nothing. Actually, in Adi Shankaracharya's Bhashya for Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2, he says there is something greater than God. He says, Ishvarapi, that greater than even God is the self. That even God cannot create nor destroy the self. This word self is a common word we use in various ways in our day-to-day affairs. Myself, his self, herself. And we take for granted the meaning of this word. Who is his self? Who is myself? We use the word, no doubt, but what is this self referring to? And so this evening's subject is, what a wonderful self. And let's go back to Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In Vedanta, the word for self is Atman. There are many words, but one that we commonly use is Atman. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Atman also means body. Atman also means mind. Atman also means ego. So it's used interchangeably amongst these equipments. When we read such a scripture without guidance, and we see that the Atman is the body, that's what we believe is ourself. The same goes with the mind, the same goes with the ego. And at whatever level I believe I am, that's how I pursue life. If I believe I'm a foolish person, then don't I act foolishly? I'll give you an example of this. I met one family, and they have 2 daughters. And they were sitting in the car, and the mother was driving me to a discourse. And I asked that mother, which daughter is like you and which daughter is like your husband? Or what combination of like that? And the mother says, politely, we try not to apply such labels because then our children will fall in to those labels. So whatever we believe we are, we pursue accordingly. If I believe that I'm a unhealthy person, then I go on living in an unhealthy manner. If I believe I'm the body, then that's all I tend to. If I believe I'm the body and mind, how much differently life presents itself then? Body, mind, ego, and on and on and on. A couple of days ago, we were talking about the fact that the body and mind are simply made up of matter. They're made up of the gunas. And just like matter is attracted to matter, you have 2 cruise ships and they're both pulling each other towards each other, Our body and mind is drawn to matter. So if I believe I'm only the body and mind, I live a very materialistic, mundane life. But the true meaning of Atman is self. And if we go into the etymology of this word, it means the innermost. This changing definition shows the need for a Satguru. Today I was playing video games with one of our Balavira students, and at the beginning of the video game it says, the announcer speaking, and here I am, whatever name he says, your gaming guru. And I thought, hey, everyone is a guru in every context in the world now. And that's why I'm using the word Satguru. Sat here means the truth. Sat here means the highest. Because anyone can be a guru, just like this video game, but not everyone can be the Satguru. A guru is someone who reveals to us the truth. And the truth of the word Atman is that which is innermost. What I've realized in my limited study of languages, no Sanskrit word can be translated into English. It's not possible. So then many are thinking, then what are we doing here? Right? If I can't translate Sanskrit into English, then does that mean I can't be enlightened? No. One can be enlightened in any language, one can be enlightened with no language. But language has its limitations, doesn't it? I was talking to one of our young adults who works with the mentally ill, and he was saying how different a meaning is when you say to someone, are you thinking about suicide? Or have you had thoughts of suicide? Similar words, but creates a very different experience, creates a very different level of sharing. Words are simply a vessel. And we need vessels. When Pujya Swami Chinmayananda was studying under Pujya Swami Tapovanam, then he had a doubt about the need for the scriptures. Sometimes we feel the same way, especially on Sunday mornings when Balavihara is going on, study group is going on. Why? Why do I have to be here? So he had this doubt, and Pujya Swami Tapovanam recognized his doubt, so he said, hey Chinmaya, go get me some water. So he's in his ashram. For those who have been to Uttarkashi, he's in his ashram, and you have to hike down to the river Ganga, and he brings this water, and Swami Tapovanam is sitting in his kutia, and he gives him this water. And he says, what is this? I asked for water. This is water. I asked you for just water. And he says, how else would I have brought you the water if there wasn't the cup, if there wasn't the lota or the vessel? Right. You can't just transmit that water without the vessel. In the same way, you and I want to transmit knowledge, but we need a vessel. And that vessel is limited, isn't it? Which means that we need the reflection to go with it. I cannot pick up a scripture and interpret it literally, and often this is what we do. And so we get a limited message and we live accordingly. This is the difference between a motivational speaker and an inspirational speaker. A motivational speaker says, look in the mirror and tell yourself, you're good, you're handsome, and everybody likes you. Not everyone is good. Definitely not everyone is handsome, and not everyone likes everyone. But an inspirational speaker will share a similar message, but give basis for it. Scriptural authority or logic or experience. So it's a much more fulfilling experience. When we use the word Atman as being the innermost, this is a feeling. We feel like the Atman is living inside of us. Just like I say right now, show me, if you break your heart, where would the pain be? If someone hurts you, someone insults you, someone breaks up a relationship, where would your pain be? Do you go, oh, someone broke my heart? Or, oh, someone broke my heart? Right? We say, oh, someone broke my heart. This is just an organ. He looks after this organ, and when people break up in relationships, nothing happens to this organ. It's just a muscle, like my bicep or like my quadricep. But we feel that pain here. And we actually do feel that pain there. We manifest that pain here. Sometimes we feel like, whoa, my heart is hurting. In the same way, when I say, tell me where your mind is, don't we say here, that person's crazy? We don't go, oh, that person's crazy or that person's crazy. We say in here that there's confusion going on in their mind. But this too is just an organ. When you and I are asleep, this brain is more active than when we are awake, but the mind has become totally quiet. And putting it into a personal context, here we're all sitting in Monroeville, but if we start talking about Jamaica or Sochi, right? Is your mind really here then? We feel like the Atman is the innermost aspect of us. Innermost is equivalent to subtle. Okay? In Vedantic thinking, that which is the innermost means it's most subtle. As an example, when I feel like I'm in this, my mind is pervading this whole body. I don't feel my hand in my shoulder. I don't feel my hand in my neck. But I feel my mind in my whole body. And inside of my mind, I feel this spirit. It's subtler. It pervades the whole entity. So that which is innermost is the most subtle. And that which is most subtle is the most pervasive. Let's take ice. Ice, if it's on this stage, is only going to be in this limited area. But if it melts into water, it touches more area. If it turns into steam, then I can't even gauge where that is. It's subtler, so it pervades more. And even at a technical level, when you and I are dreaming, are we identified with the body? See how it's grosser, so it doesn't transfer into the dream state. When you and I are sleeping, then the mind and intellect are let go of too, and only the ego remains with us. It's the subtlest. It's always with us in all of these states. So when we use the word Atman, it's a feeling that it's the innermost. And whenever there's a innermost, there's also a outer then. Just like it's a game we play, if I like you, that automatically means that there's someone else that I feel is neutral or I dislike. And this is a dangerous game because we keep playing the liking game, not realizing that the disliking game is growing within us as well. At our discussion at Carnegie Mellon, we were talking about Gautam Buddha once was sitting with his devotee Anand. And Anand says they're on a cliff looking at a nature-esque scene. And Anand says, "What a beautiful sunset." Anand, quiet. Sorry, Buddha, quiet. So Anand says it again. "What a beautiful sunset." Gautam Buddha, silent. So Anand naturally is frustrated now and says, "I'm saying what a beautiful sunset. Don't you have a feeling towards this too?" And Buddha says, "If this sunset is beautiful, what about yesterday's? What about tomorrow's?" See how this simple label of this is a beautiful sunset automatically excludes then the others. So when I say innermost, that means there is differences. That means there is separation. This is a game of duality. Atman is infinite, and I'm going to elaborate more on that. When there is infinitude, how can there be inside and outside? There's no separation. Take the basic sciences, mathematics. When I subtract a huge number from a less huge number, then the number that remains, is it outside of infinity? Is it inside or outside? It's within infinity. Whole numbers, prime numbers, negative numbers, imagined numbers, zero, fractions, everything is inclusive of infinity. It doesn't matter how much I mess around with this and I say this is ahead, this is behind, whatever it is, but it's simply within infinity. The same thing goes with a physical science. Spatially, what is outside of infinity? What is closer or farther away in infinity? Is Pluto farther away from infinity than Earth? Is the sun closer to infinity? Is plus 300 million closer to infinity than minus 300 million? Infinity goes in both directions, not in just one direction. So when we talk about feeling this innermost, it's because we feel separation. And that is ego. We feel that the person next to us is separate. We feel separate from the chair. We feel separate from the ground. And on and on and on. And so when we talk about oneness, we're not sold by that idea of oneness, are we? It's very easy to say, love thy neighbor. Why? My neighbor is different than me. When it comes to our families, it's easier then, isn't it? That child specifically, because we feel that we're the creators of that child. They're my flesh and blood. We are identified with the ego right now, which is why we use words like inside and outside. Atman is infinite. And that's why I was sharing on Sunday. People poetically say, when I die, my spirit, my Atman, will go into another body and will continue along. See the illogical nature of such thinking. And that's why I said it's poetic, but poetry and the truth often are not aligned. Because if my spirit goes from my body into another body, that means the spirit is not there. So there's a separation, which means there's no infinitude then. If I die and my spirit goes into another body, that means the spirit wasn't there, which means the spirit is not infinite. I'll put it differently. When I say that only Kalki but not Krishna, I've actually limited and insulted both then. Because if God is infinite, then how is God not all forms? How is God not all names? See, people love to think they're God only, but they're not thinking about it enough. I feel an underlying theme of this whole week in Pittsburgh is trying to be more thoughtful, to think more deeply about our day-to-day affairs. If I truly believe that my God is infinite, that means my God is all of your gods, and all of your gods is the same as my God. When someone dies, their spirit goes nowhere because their spirit is everywhere. Not possible for the spirit to go from one place to another. When someone dies, what happens? Their body, which was created, becomes uncreated. That is going to happen. No one can stop that. When we listen to Vedantic thoughts, do we think we're going to become immortal? These teachings will not save us from death. They will save us from what? The fear of death. And that's actually what kills us. Not death. Death is like that. But it's a fear leading up to that that actually kills us. So the body dies because the body was born. The spirit remains as is. All that happens when I die is my mind is transferred from one piece of hardware to another. Just like software. We're using a laptop here. Suppose I walk out of here and I fall. And the screen shatters, a few of the keys fall off. Whoever this is not going to be very happy, but I'm visiting here, so it's not my fault. But there's a lot of important files on here. So what do? We go to the Geek Squad. We go to Staples, wherever there is, and they pull out the hard drive, they pull out the software, and put it into new hardware. And it's actually better than. I have a newer screen. I have softer keys and so on and so forth. What happened to the electricity in this laptop and in the next laptop? Exactly the same. It has nothing to do with software or hardware. That's from the perspective of death. Now, from the perspective of marriage, people love to say, I found my soulmate. It took me a long time, but but I went on to shadi.com and I found my soulmate. See, that implies that there's two souls. And if we say it and treat it poetically, it's fine. But if we start to believe that, there's a danger in that. There's no such thing as a soulmate. And when people speak that, I often want to get up and say, that's not possible. You're lying to everyone. When we think more deeply about the infinite cannot be created. No combination, no permutation of finite numbers, finite spaces, finite powers can create that which is infinite. And anything that is not created is not subject to being destroyed. Because what would destroy it? If anything could destroy the infinite, it would only be the infinite. But if the infinite destroys the infinite, just stop there. Like that foolish riddle that they ask is, can God create a hole big enough to disappear into? You're all thinking, oh, what can he do with that? Anything that's is not created cannot be destroyed. And Bhagavan Krishna shares this very nicely in chapter 2. And it's foolish for me to say very nicely because that means everything else he's not sharing is not nice then. He says, Earth cannot affect water. Water cannot affect fire. Fire cannot affect air. And none of these four elements can touch space. If I have a snowball and I throw it into the space, is the space affected by that snowball? When it rains, is the space affected? When there's a forest fire, is the space affected? When there's a tornado, is the space affected? None of these more limited elements can touch that which is a subtler element. Now, what's subtler than space? Atman. That which is infinite. So think logically. Infinitude cannot be destroyed. And the infinite is the Atman. And the Atman is the innermost aspect of you, the self. So one of the greatest fears we have, which is death, is it legitimate? Is our fear of death validated? We like to believe so, but with greater thinking, it's not validated. This infinite is you. This infinite self is, and I have to say because for the sake of conversation, yourself. See how wrong the word your is? Because it's something different. It's my mic. It's my hand. Anything that is your, my, etc., it means it's different. Myself means it's me and then the self. You are the self. I am the self. There is only the self. When we say myself, what are we referring to? Is it the body? Is it the mind? Is it the intellect? Is it the ego? All of these are dependent on the one prior to that. The body is dependent on the mind, mind on the intellect, intellect on the ego. Ego is dependent on self. No self, no ego. No ego, self still remains. That's the nature of infinitude. We are the infinite. And just because we don't believe that we're infinite does not mean that we're not experiencing the infinite. Because how can we not be experiencing the infinite? Put a worldly example to this. Just because I don't believe I'm in Chinmaya Sanjeevani doesn't mean that I'm not. Right? I don't believe I'm at Chinmaya Sanjeevani right now. Does that mean I'm not experiencing Chinmaya Sanjeevani? I don't believe that I'm Vivek. I don't believe that I'm Emil. Does that mean that I'm not experiencing Vivek and Emil? And just because I don't believe I'm experiencing something doesn't change that something. We can call the truth by many names, but it's still the truth. And the word that revolves around this confusion is ascharya. Ascharya means wonderment. What a wonder that which is the closest to me, I don't even I don't even believe. I don't even experience. Well, I don't believe, but I'm experiencing all the time. What a wonder. We talk about how we take our surroundings for granted. Yesterday, after I finished exercising, I took a glass and I filled up a glass of water and I was thinking to myself, I can move 2 feet from the exercise place to the tap and quench my thirst and not have to worry about the glass or the water, how much is coming out, how it's coming out. And don't we take that for granted? Clean water, flowing water. There's parts of the world where they don't have access to water, and if they do, there's extreme limitations around it. It comes for 1 hour in the morning or 1 hour in the evening, something like that. So we tend to take for granted even minor matters like flowing water. Imagine how much we take for granted the fact that we are infinite. This is Ascharya. And I wanted to highlight a verse from chapter 2 for all of you. It's verse 29, and I'll read the English for the sake of simplicity. What Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, one sees this as a wonder. Ascharya. The word Ascharya is used many times here, 4 times. One sees this. This here is referring to the self as a wonder. Here, seeing is not with the eyes. Seeing is being. It's experiencing. I'll give you an example of this. One day, a father comes home and gives his wife a bouquet of roses and hugs her and says, I love you. And that son is seeing all of this play and tells his father, you don't really love my mother, do you? Right? He's confused. The boy is confused. He's not saying it disrespectfully, but is confused. You don't really love my mother, do you? So the father slaps him in the face. And the son says, ow, why did you do that to me? And he says, why? What's wrong? Well, now I have this pain in my cheek, but I can't see the pain, so it's not true. You think because you can't see this love, it's not true. In the same way, I can't see your pain, so I don't believe that that pain is there. Seeing here is not with the eyes. Seeing here is experience. And in Taittiriya Upanishad, when one attains enlightenment, they don't speak about it. They just make noises. Ha, vu, ha, vu. They don't know what to do. Just noises come out. Because how can you use that which is limited to describe that which is unlimited? Havu at least is less of a limitation than whatever else we would say. They are silent. Remember when Swami Shantananda talked about Dhruva? I'm sure he did. And Dhruva has the darshan of Bhagavan Narayana. And remember, though he's seeing him with his eyes, he's actually experiencing him. Darshan is much more than sight. It is vision. And Bhagavan Vishnu says, so, you earned me. Now what do you want? And what does he say? Nothing. He can't open his mouth. It's only when Bhagavan touches him that he begins speaking. And he doesn't ask for anything. He starts trying to describe Lord Vishnu. So the one who sees this as a wonder, as an ascharya. And after they see it, then what do? They speak about this as a wonder. Imagine the happiest moment in your life. Someone's birth. Jokingly, I'm going to say someone's death. You won something, you earned something, you went somewhere. Something was relieved. When I mean death, I mean you were relieved of some sort of pain. Imagine that. Now imagine that times infinity. We can't even imagine doubling that. We're so moved by that single moment. Imagine doubling that, tripling it, quadruple, and so on and so forth. We just can't. Going back to Taittiriya Upanishad, the Rishi there tries to quantify the experience of the self. Okay? So he says, if you take all of the healthy people in the world, and they can't just be healthy, but they also have to be wealthy. The point here is strong in body, strong in mind. You collect all of them, and you take all of their joy. That gets put on the numerator. Yesterday we were studying the happiness quotient. That gets put on the numerator and is assigned the value of 1. Then, to fill in the denominator, you take 1 drop of joy of someone who is enlightened, someone who knows that they are the Atman, someone who experiences that infinitude. So that becomes the denominator. What is that number? 1 quintillion. So 1 with 15 zeros that follow. This is everyone's joy, is the numerator. The denominator is a drop of one person's joy. So when they say, they speak of this as a wonder, as an ascharya, imagine you actually had a calculator that can compute that. That's a wonder. So one person sees this as a wonder, one person speaks about this as a wonder, then another person hears about this as a wonder. So one attains that enlightenment, wants to share it with the next person, because that's what it means to be human, right? I go to a good restaurant, I say, you go there. You go to a good skiing area, you'd say, you come too. And the person is hearing this. You mean there's more joy than watching the Super Bowl with friends? There's more joy than a 2-hour delay? There's more joy than a summer without traveling anywhere? There's more joy than that? What an ascharya. What a wonder. And my favorite is the last statement, which it says, yet, having heard of this, no one understands this at all. That you and I have been exposed to this for how long? Through hearing, through speaking, through hearing. Yet to still think I have to go to my Atman, that is ascharya. That we make that which is so close to us so far. This is why I constantly highlight, you and I are in a game of unlearning. And the faster we unlearn, the more we tune into this self. Pujya Swami Shantananda shares this when asked to speak about Balavihar. The purpose of Chinmay Mission is, one of the purposes is Balavihar. Our children have 3 facets to who they are, just like you and I. They have a physical, a mental, and an intellectual aspect of who they are. And as parents, we give a lot of attention to their physical aspect. That is their hygiene, that is their hearts, that is their muscles, that is their food intake. We put them in sports, we put them in dancing, and so on and so forth. We do a lot for their intellectual welfare. We put them in good schools, we put them in good programs, go on exchange programs, and learn music and dance and art and all of that. Intellect. But we miss out on this middle part, which is the mind. In this middle part, the development of virtues takes place. Because where do vices live? Vices live in the mind. And so vices, if poison is in the mind, where should I put the antivenom? In my knee, in my intellect. It should also go into the mind. Taking someone for granted is a vice. If I keep taking for granted my parents as an example, that shows that I'm arrogant, it shows that I'm ignorant, it shows that I'm apathetic, and many other vices that come with that. But someone who lives with such gratitude in their heart, that's a virtue then, isn't it? So we have to start by being grateful for articles, then circumstances, then beings, then my being. It always starts outside. Pujya Swami Chinmayananda shares, a great way to live life, follow the advice we give to others. If we just followed that, we would all be enlightened. What do you mean good life? We'd be enlightened if we followed the advice we give to others. So it's much easier to, in this context, give advice. So we have to learn to love or not take for granted articles. And that's easy. Like I said about tap water, snow tires, glasses. It's easy. Then circumstances. When was the last time you and I appreciated freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom to practice religion? We love to practice freedom to carry a concealed weapon. But the other subtler freedoms, imagine being in a country where you and I couldn't do this right now. So circumstances. Then being grateful for the beings around us. That our kids are our kids for our well-being. That we live in this city and we're surrounded by the people we're surrounded by for our well-being. That our karmas are interconnected. And I come here once a month, even my karmas are connected to you. Why do I come to this center once a month? There's other centers that are in this 4, 5, 6 hour radius, but my karmas are connected here. So being grateful externally helps me to start being grateful internally. That I'm more than this body, I'm more than the mind, I'm more than the intellect, that I am that which is enlivening all of this. It is a wonderment that we take for granted this self. Despite the experience and hearing and speaking about all of this as a wonder, our scriptures, our sages still try, because they know that is the means by which we will actually come to experience the truth. It's like me saying you have to go to Las Vegas, but you can't use buses, boats, planes, trains. You can't use any vehicles, but you have to go to Las Vegas. Right? What good is that? The scriptures and sages try to help us rise to the Atman. Though the means are limited, though the means are finite, they try because it becomes a catapult. It's called a lakshana. I'll give you an example that the scriptures use. You're going to look at the moon, but you can't see the moon. Imagine there's no wall here, and the moon is back there, and you can't see the moon. So I say, hey, do you see the tree behind me? You see the tree. Now go to the top of the tree. Okay, now you're there. Now go across to the branch, to the end of the branch, you're there. Now go to the end of the leaf, now you're there. Now look beyond it. Is the tree the moon? No, but you can't access the moon without the reference point of the tree. So it's a lakshana, it's an indicator. And our scriptures and sages try to indicate the Atman, the self, systematically. We've all heard of the story of the 5 blind boys who were taken by their master to experience an elephant. Okay? So each one of them is holding a different part of the elephant. The one who's holding the trunk, it says, whoa, elephants are flexible. One who's holding the feet is saying, whoa, elephants are solid. One who's holding the tusk, the elephants are cold. One who's rubbing the belly, elephants are hairy. One who's holding the tail, elephants are skinny. Are any of these boys right? Are any of these boys wrong? Right? They're indicators of that elephant, but you need to have all 5 parts to actually know the full elephant. In the same way, the systematic study of Atman helps us to see the full picture. In some of the Sanskrit words that describe Atman, one word says unmoving in English, and the other word is also unmoving in English. But if we study it more deeply, the first word is saying that it doesn't move on top. The second word adds another detail that says it doesn't move on the bottom. Because I cannot move on the top but move on the bottom. Like not an iceberg, but suppose I'm like a flower with my roots underneath. On the top, not moving, but my roots are dangling in water. I may imagine that. Or I can be like a tree, unmoving down, but my branches are moving. But if I apply both structures there, then I get the full imagery of that which is not moving. Like spices. You go to some people's homes, And if the food is not flavorful, you have a choice of salt, pepper, or cayenne pepper. That's it. You go to other people's homes and you get confused by how many spices they have. But they know that you need a little bit of this turmeric and a little bit of this jeera. And you need a little bit of this, a lot of the green chilies to complete that taste. Without that, you cannot have the full flavor of that meal. So it's systematic, isn't it? Now, one system I keep trying to highlight for all of us to help us train ourselves to think like this: Shruti, Yukti, Anubhuti. We should get into the habit of not accepting any philosophical idea unless it is supported by the scriptures, logic, and experience. And if any of these do not support it, we don't accept. Only when all three of these strokes are in play do we accept. So let's start with Shruti. What is the truth? The truth is that which is most universal. Think, for the human body, what is the truth? Oxygen. Is it curd rice? That's only the truth for South Indians. But it's not the truth for all people. Even sugar is not the truth. A certain level of sugar, but too much sugar, dangerous. Too little sugar, dangerous. But oxygen, that's the truth for a human body. Water, that's the truth for a human body. What is that which is most universal? Is it hair? Is it skin? Is it humans? Is it being alive? See, each of those is becoming more truthful, but it's still not the truth. The truth is existence, awareness. If you took away one aspect of the universe by which the universe would disappear, what would it be? Is it hair, skin, eyes, mind, love? It is existence. If existence is taken away from the universe becomes non-existent. Take away oxygen, fine. Take away matter, fine. Take away space, take away a vacuum, all of that, fine. But take away existence, there's nothing. So that which is most universal is the truth. So when we talk about the idea of us being infinite, the infinite is that which is most universal, and that is our nature. Existence, truth, the universe, they're all synonyms for each other. See how logical this is. I've not even addressed the scriptures. That's Satyam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam, the scriptures say that. But the logic behind it is the truth is that which is universal, and what is most universal is existence. And what is existence? Sat. What is Sat? Me. Again, Satyam. The scriptures have said this is you, and have logically shown that. Carrying along with this experience now, let's go to the experiential side of this. What is the infinite other than an expression of forms and names? Okay? In science, we share energy is not created nor destroyed. It simply changes shapes and names. Forms and names. That's it. So what is the infinite? All of this. This is like, so I have a white light and I have a prism, and that prism turns into the rainbow. But as I go back to the source, what do I go back to? That white light. So here I have the infinite, and then I have all of these forms and names. And when all of these forms and names are not there, what remains? The infinite. I'll give you another example of this. I was teaching a group of Balavere students, and I gave each of them 2 handfuls of Legos. And I asked them, what do you have now? And they all said, Legos, and they were so happy. If you give a child Legos, it's enlightenment, it's ascharya. Because they're so loud, and then all of a sudden just silence looking at these Legos. And I told them, you now have 15 minutes to do whatever you want. So for 15 minutes, Mona. I didn't even enforce it. It was just natural silence. Samadhi, like we were talking about yesterday. After 15 minutes, show and tell time. So each person went and shared what they created and a name for it too. So homes and spaceships and guns and all of this stuff. And after all of this was completed, then I asked them to break what they had built. And Samadhi went into straight sorrow. What kind of teacher are you? Why are you doing this to us? And sadly, piece by piece, they were breaking these. They built it so rapidly and then slowly disassembling it. And I asked them, now what do you have? Legos. Legos in the beginning, Legos in the middle, Legos in the end. And what happened in the middle? A form and a name was given. By whom? Legos didn't. It was by a human. Gave a form, gave a name. Does that change the infinite? See, I've given two logical points here. I had said the truth is that which is most universal. What is most universal? Existence. Next logical point I said, what is existence? It's everything. And just because names and forms are there doesn't make it not existence. Just because I call this whatever I call it, it doesn't make it not metal. This is a kurta, this is a dhoti, this is a shawl. But what is it all? Cotton. That's it. So the scriptures are saying, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, that you are Sat. You are the truth, you are existence. Why are they saying it? Logically, we took on the truth is universal, and so what is most universal? Existence. And just because there's a name and form there, doesn't change the fact that this is existence. And now at an experiential level, how many people, please put your hand up, if you've ever experienced your non-existence? Please put your hand up if you've experienced your non-existence. This is where, if one person puts their hand up, the next person, yeah, I think I have too. I was in one satsang where I'd asked people after, it was the fourth day of a Jnana Yajna, talking hardcore about virtues. How many of you will be enlightened in this lifetime? 60 people in the room. One man puts his hand up in the back. He's looking at me. He looks at everyone else, sees no one else has their hand up, so he puts his hand down. And I'm thinking, 4 days of talking on Gita, and one look at the other people and you put your hand down. No one has ever experienced their non-existence. No one is experiencing their non-existence. No one ever will experience their non-existence. This is not possible. If you're experiencing, then you are existing. And here is where there's a certain school of thinkers. They're called Shunyavadis, nihilists. They believe the highest reality is zero. Shunya means zero. Nothingness. Okay? Think about it. If I'm experiencing nothingness, I'm there then, am I not? If I know there's nothing, then I'm there, which means there's not nothing. If we shut off all the lights and I say, hey, are you there? What do you say? Yes. What did the lights have to do with you knowing about your presence? It's beyond lights. That's what we chant with Aarti, that, hey, your light is the light of the sun and the moon and the stars and fire and lightning is second. Your light is first. This is why we greet the people we revere with the Aarti Thali, saying that you know the truth. You know that your nature is that Atman, and we don't, which is why we're inviting you. So please guide us to find that same truth. No different than a Purna Kumbha. That Purna here is that fullness. You know you're full. You've rediscovered your fullness. And we're asking you to come into our home because we want to be full too. and we know you can guide us. We have so many people come to our home and they make us more empty. But you're full, so you can help us. All that we've discussed or explored this evening is about us. I am not a professor. I'm not encouraging you to be a professor of this subject matter either. Why we are exploring this is because what do we all want to be? Happy. Infinitude and happiness are synonyms for each other. Where there are limits, there's a limit on happiness. Where there's no limits, there is no limit on happiness. Are you and I happier in the waking state or the dream state? Tends to be the dream. Are we happier in the dream state or the sleep state? Sleep state. See how the limits drop. Waking state, body, mind, intellect are all limiting me. Dream state, just the mind and intellect, mind and ego. Sleep state, just the ego. No limits, less limits on my happiness. This is why people love water, because I lose the limit of the weight of my body, those who can swim. This is why we love being on a plane and you look out the window. See, lines are a gauge of limits. When you look out of a plane, there's no lines, so there's no reference points. That infinitude. This is when people are on cruise ships. They love going on the front or the back of the ship and they just stare how the water goes on and on. There's so few limits. There's just the horizon, the one line of water, and that's it. But here, if you look in this room, there's so many names, there's so many forms. Those are all limits. This is the difficulty we have with the red lights, stop signs, border patrols, and so on and so forth. They're all, who are you to limit me? This is us. We were studying Vivekachudamani at Sandipani, and it's a thick text, both in physically and mentally. It is a thick text. And every once in a while, we'd be so intent in our books or our writing, and Pujya Swami Tejamayinanda would ask us to look up and say, hey, I'm talking about you. This book is about you. So we get lost. The duality is so deeply embedded that I think I'm studying about something else. But I'm actually studying about myself. We did that talk here already about who am I? This is the same, I keep giving the same talk, but just we change the title and I change a few stories and a little bit of the order. It's like yesterday's food that I cooked today and I add a little bit of a little bit of spices in presentation. I made this for you. Everyone's smiling. Oh, how does he know that? This is about us. And just because we do not believe it doesn't make this the untruth. So start to believe. The infinite cannot be defined. And that's why I'm beginning this chain of thought by saying our scriptures and sages try to indicate the truth, but it's not possible. The finite cannot be the infinite, but they try. Systematically, they try. Finally, we have to let go of all concepts. Sarva dharma parityaja. That we have to let go, we have to renounce, fully renounce. Parityaja. We have to fully renounce sarva dharma, all concepts. Dharma here, it means concepts, ideas, paths, means, everything. I have to let go. I have to let go of limits. So the idea of Brahman is Sat Chit Ananda, that's actually a concept too. The existence, awareness, joy, it's more than that. Even saying more than that, that's a concept. See, these concepts don't end. And Pujya Swami Chinmayananda shares this much more simply. He says, imagine the scriptures and sages are a pole vault, a pole. And you have to use these, and you have to be firm in this, And you have to allow this to carry you to a certain height. But if you hold on to the pole, then I just knock over the bar. I don't cross over what I need to, and I get hurt. Attachment. But at that climax, I have to let go. This is where faith is the final virtue that one needs to practice. Logic can go so far, knowledge will pick up after that, but finally, faith. And when I let go of that pole, then the momentum carries me over to victory, to that Jaya. All that I've shared today are just concepts. But what else can we do? So once, Puja Swami Chinmayananda was invited to speak on Ramana Maharshi. It was his Jayanti or his Samadhi, I don't remember the exact occasion. 1,500 people in the hall. This is in Chennai. And Puja Swami Chinmayananda walks onto stage, sits in his seat, and closes his eyes. 1 minute passes, 5 minutes pass, 15 minutes pass, half an hour passes. And nobody dares to say anything to Puja Swami Chinmayananda. And finally, after 45 minutes, someone said, "Will you be speaking on Ramana Maharshi?" And he opens his eyes and says, "And that's what Ramana Maharshi was all about." And he got off stage and left. Right? How can you speak about someone who is enlightened? And poetically then, another saying is, only Vivekananda can know another Vivekananda. We can infer that that person's like Vivekananda or that person's like Vivekananda, but we can never definitively know that. Only when we rise to being Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda, Puja Swami Vivekananda, can we know another to be of that same spirit. Until then, we can only infer. So the question is, should we not have any concepts? Should we not infer? No, we should use these. These are means. How many times in Gita Lord Krishna loses himself in describing the Master? Why? Because it's inspiring. It helps us to know that we can jump that high too. And without that message, I wouldn't know how high I should jump or how high I can jump. These concepts are indicators, and then I let go of these indicators. This is a heavy subject, and I think 60 minutes on this subject is sufficient. That's a concept too. But I'll leave you with the answer to yesterday's Ra. If you remember, I had asked you to think about why we chant Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Why we chant that at the end when it's actually a opening prayer. For those who have studied Ishavasya Upanishad, because that's a text we come across often, it's right there at the beginning. Before the first mantra is the Shanti mantra. Then why is it in our tradition we chant this as a closing mantra? Did you do your... Oh, it's not a Ra, it's a Rad. It's a reflection assignment of the day, sorry. Not the... You're all thinking, but you gave us a week. It's your reflection assignment of the day. Okay. Chant along with me. Om Purnamadaya. Purnam, I was testing you. Purnam Adaha, which means that is infinite. Purna, full, complete. That here is referring to before creation, okay? Then Purnam Idam. Idam means this, creation. So before creation there was infinity, and now that infinity has manifested as creation. So Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate. That's the point I had just made. So that is infinite, this is infinite. This has come from that. So far so good. Again, Purnam Adaha, Purnam Idam, Purnat Purnam Udachyate. From that, this has come. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. When this is removed from that, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. When this is removed from that, that alone remains. And notice through whatever sequence of non-creation or creation, that Purna never changes. That is infinite. This is infinite. This came from that. When this is removed from that, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. So, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. But you're all thinking, fine, we already knew that. Right now, we feel more infinite than when we leave this room. We are thinking about the infinite, we are speaking about the infinite, we are acting in an infinite way. So this is why we say, but what about the real world? This is all fun to hear, but what about the real world when I have to go to work or I have to drive my car or go to the bank? That's the point, that there is no real world. There is only the world. The label real and unreal is false. From this is infinite, that is infinite. That has come from this. When that is removed, this still remains. Or switch it around. From that, this has come. When this is removed, that still remains, which means that is still infinite. That's a better way to look at it, that this is creation, meaning these thoughts have been created here. But when this environment goes away, which it has to, then that's still infinite. See, the idea of the real world is a concept. It's a game we play with ourselves. And you know why we play this game? It's because we don't want to change. When I call that the real world, I've changed in the unreal world, which means when I go back to the real world, I have to unchange what I've changed here. If we've taken one step towards enlightenment, when we go back to the unreal world, to the real world, we have to go one step back. I was in one forum. Someone had asked me, Vivekji, can you please share thoughts on practical Vedanta? And I politely told that gentleman that the question is flawed. Practical Vedanta is practicing Vedanta. Your question is already implying that you don't want to practice. And I said it respectfully. It wasn't him. He was just facilitating. This question is sharing that we don't want to practice Vedanta. So whenever we talk about these concepts are simply a justified excuse to not change. But we've already studied. The first day I came to this building this year, on the 19th, and I talked about a new year, a new you. I said that to be happy, to be serene, we need to evolve. To evolve, we need energy. For energy, we need discipline. For discipline, we need direction. And what is the direction we want? Serenity. I furthered this in the e-vichara that was sent recently. This is the only purpose of living. If someone is not trying to rediscover the self, then they're simply living a life of lies. And that is an intense statement to be told, but it's the truth. Whether we like it or don't like it, whether we apply such labels or don't, this is the truth. Any other person that someone tells us is poetic. The purpose is to serve. It's not even to serve. That's a means to the self. The purpose is to study the scriptures. Nope. Purpose is to know the self. The purpose is to create love. That too is duality, isn't it? If I love, that means there's another person there, another entity. The only purpose is to know, and I'm going to lay this on you, the only purpose is to know that there's no purpose. Purpose is a human concept. Many people ask, why did the Creator create the world? Why did Bhagwan manifest all of this? Who's asking the question? A human. Humans are incomplete, so there's always a purpose to what we do. We like to believe there's a purpose. A lot of what we do is purposeless. But we have this purpose to complete ourselves. We cannot apply human logic to that which has no limits, that which is infinite, that which is the Creator. That's not possible. So me saying what was the purpose, that's like me comparing the quality, the metal of my watch with the texture or the softness of that piece of paper. Yeah, why would I compare those two? You can't compare those two. The only purpose is to let go. Any questions on what a wonderful self? Exactly. What is the purpose of asking questions? Just be silent. In the worship of Dakshinamurti Bhagwan, you have this young boy and you have these older rishis that are at his feet and he's teaching them. And how is he teaching them? Mauna Vakya, without words. Showing him the highest truth is without words. And he just uses the indicator, that is his hands. But even that, this is just an indicator. You're right. What would I ask? Does anyone have any questions? It's okay if you have questions. I was sharing in the car. When I had taken the first group of chicks on the Chinmaya Inspiration Yatra, at the end of the Yatra, each one of these 20 people spent 24 hours in isolation. I escorted them to a room, small room, bathroom, beds, windows, with a basket of food, some fruits, biscuits, bread, stuff like that. And they went into that room and they locked the door from the inside. And there's bars on the window. It's small rooms, so that's what I'm saying. No hidden corners or hidden entryways. And they spent those 24 hours by themselves in isolation. No electronics, no music, no books, isolation, like jail. And after those 24 hours, then I knocked on their door and I said, let's go to the Maruti Mandir, we'll chant Hanuman Chalisa, and we'll debrief. And these are all healthy young adults, healthy in body and mind. They're professionals, they're students, they're gone through the Balavihara system, and on and on and on. And every one of these 20 young adults expressed how they were scared. They saw people in the room, they thought someone was coming in, they found it difficult to sleep. And this is a classic expression of concepts. We have all of these concepts that prevent us from reaching our potential. I'll give you another example of this. One of my friends from school told me that she cannot sleep unless the television is on. So she sets up a timer for 60 minutes and then lies down in bed and the TV is on, and then she falls asleep whatever period and the TV shuts off. When I was growing up, I noticed on our television there was a timer, but I never understood why till she explained to me that people can't sleep without this timer. See the concept, the limit that they're putting on that which is natural. In the same way, these young adults, how much fear they had just by trying to be silent. And this is a way we can tune into the silence, is by practicing relative silence. I've already given a practical way to live What a Wonderful Self. Be grateful for articles, be grateful for circumstances, be grateful for beings, be grateful for being, the being. Now, another way is practice silence. When it comes to articles, let us speak less about stuff. I talked about food specifically. We apply a lot of labels to foods. Let us just, this is energy that is needed. I don't go to my car and say, I'm putting in 87 octane into you right now. This 87 octane is wonderful. And I go on and labeling gasoline. Because it's just fuel that is needed to move the car. Food the same way. So articles. Then circumstances. Let us talk about the weather less. We love talking about the weather that happened, what weather is going to happen tomorrow. Back in the day, they only gave 3-day forecasts. Now, and then in my own lifetime, it shifted from 7 to 14. Now you can see the weather for 14 days. So circumstances. Then beings. Let us stop having concepts of beings. That person's hair is long, that person's hair is short, that person's skin color is like this, that person is from that part of the country, that person must be like this. Concepts. When I start letting go of that, which is easy, and letting go of concepts here, I was sharing about being silent. Silent there, silent there, silent there. Slowly I trained myself to be so quiet that I realize I am silence. Think. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.